and change you'll ever get is from God. It's going to come from the Lord, or it's not going to come at all. It's going to come when you admit that you can't do it and that you've got to have His help.
Do you not know that for everything you do, there is something assigned to you? And this is what people just don't talk about it. I mean, you can go down to the Vatican archives and unlock some documents, and there it is. Of course, that would give you names, and you'd be doing a lot of reading. But nevertheless, you would begin to see something very important. We're going to talk about some of those things tonight. All of it has to do with overcoming and living your life as Jesus prescribed, and then you begin to see the importance of why He said what He said. Any limitations or anything Jesus asked us to fight it really was a plea so that you will not have your nightmares come true. In fact, He's kept all that away from you. But we live in a time now where men are utilizing these spirits again. They're not worshiping. I'll give you an example. A long time ago, people would worship these spirits and work by them. Even exorcists would exorcise other demons by demons. Now, I know that sounds odd and strange, right? But it's an absolute fact. Just like if you read the book of Enoch, in the book of Enoch, Azazel taught men. He had angels under him who taught men how to bind spirits, how to loose spirits. And of course, they're bound. He can't do anybody any harm. But this is exactly what happens today. Did you not know that some of the exorcist classes come from the teachings of the fallen? That's a fact. Jesus handled that in a very different fashion. But there are things that give instruction to those who have analytical minds to follow procedures, and they didn't come from the Most High, right? There are documents supporting that too, and where it came from. The spiritual intellect that was given to mankind to have procedures to bind up certain demons. But here's the bad part about that. It vexes the soul. And that person, whoever does this in that fashion, their soul is so vexed that they can never live life in a celebratory fashion again. They're stripped of components of their soul. Doesn't mean they're damned or anything, because we really don't understand the spiritual realm. We can't see it. It's all by faith, unless you have been directly exposed to it, which makes Christ, the Messiah, Jesus of Nazareth, the most powerful barrier that exists concerning us. It really does. And that is your Savior. And that's why you've been spared. And that's why things cannot get to you, because without Christ, you would be ripped to shreds right now. Right? Your life would be in absolute turmoil. So then what you have been going through has been carefully managed. There have been spirits that they really desire to destroy you right now. I mean, right now, if they could. But because of the blood of the Lamb, because of Christ, they can't. Now, all of this will become clear by the end of this talk, and hopefully you guys can, especially reading in the New Testament, you may have a newfound thanks for Christ. I will provoke your mind so that you can look into your life and all of you can see the situation unfolding. Then you'll be able to identify by yourselves a truth, not some bogus, made-up, fanciful thing. Not to make a demon beautiful, because a lot of people in this day and age, they try to make demonic entities beautiful. That word demon comes from the word intelligence, just so you know. That means they have specialities in very specific fields. That's where it comes from. They change form. They change their appearance. A spirit does not have a bodily form like us, so it can take the form of anything. And it often will take the form of something that will help it work whatever it's trying to work. Whether that be something scary or something beautiful. Satan will manifest as an angel of light. Remember that? Remember how beautiful Satan was? Of course he was beautiful. That's how he tricks people. But he has a very specific role, Satan does. Beelzebub, same thing. Baal, same thing. All these different entities, they have very specific things that they do. We'll cover that as soon as I get back. But I want you guys to know this. Also, let me provoke your mind. Here we are. Why did God bind the 200 that fell on Mount Hermon? That were the chiefs of 10 of the Nephilim. He bound those in Tartarus, in chains. But the rest of them are roaming free. Why is Satan roaming free? But the 200 that fell, that made it with women and had children, why are they bound? And why is Satan free? What is the difference? There is a difference. There's a big difference. A difference you might need to know about. That means you'll have to have a backstory beyond mythology into the reality of what is called the Nephilim and the fallen angels. Those names, some people get mixed up in these names, but it's just a naming convention, basically. So you can say the fallen and the children of the fallen. You don't even have to use that word Nephilim. Nephilim is a word in a different language that indicates one of the children of the fallen. But we'll go over that. We'll give answer to why they took the book of Enoch. They tried to get rid of that. There are letters of apology that were written, edicts that were written concerning the book of Enoch, concerning the confusion covering the book of Enoch. And it's almost like most of your major religious institutions, if they were to introduce that book, they would lose half their members. So they don't want to do that because there is a type of stigma that goes with it, right? People have been tricked so much by people who would do them wrong, right? Who would carry the banner of a Christian, but they were out scamming folks that they don't trust anything outside of the King James. But that's okay. They're about to be personally introduced into most things. Again, that will become an important book, the book of Enoch will. And it was said to spread in the last days. For those who will be living in the days of tribulation, don't let that scare you, because you're already in the days of tribulation. As the book of Enoch explained, the days of tribulation began when Jesus ascended to the right hand of the Father. Isn't that something? But the days of tribulation began when Jesus ascended to the right hand of the Father. That means, realistically, you could be in the days of tribulation, and it's not what you thought it was, is it? Because what you may not know, there's a difference between tribulation of flesh and tribulation of the soul. Tribulation of the soul has been going on for a long time. Our Father focuses on the salvation of the soul, not the flesh. So then that word tribulation holds different meanings based upon the context in which it's used. You see tribulation of the world, of people going through calamitous events by way of weather, things of that nature. And there's also tribulation of the soul, the fight, the battle for your soul. That's why in Revelation it says, in your patience possess ye your souls. That's why Paul said, that day shall not come, lest there come a falling away first, that man of perdition be revealed. Now, if the man of perdition be revealed, if he is revealed, that means the Antichrist is revealed while Christians are still here on earth. So what does that mean? That means many people are going to be here, that great gathering of the saints when Jesus changes them in a twinkling of an eye is not going to happen until the Antichrist comes. It's good to read 2 Thessalonians over and over so you don't lose that, right? So that you stay sober and focused and not fearful. You have nothing to fear. If you really had something to fear, that means you're not saved. Well, we do have emotions. We have a set of some decent emotions and some bad. They are reactions to something. Psychologists say emotions are real. So let me reprogram you, because after all, we are spirits, right? Emotions are a feedback mechanism that's in the flesh. Emotions, every time somebody has emotions, is a chemical feedback mechanism by way of the flesh. This is provoked by thoughts, by your mind. So if you were in some type of pure environment where you had no flesh but still existed, you would not have these emotions that psychologists have named. Psychologists have named them emotions. Our Father did not. Psychologists categorize the behaviors of men and some of the feedback that men would have towards certain situations. They call them emotions. Now, I use that for an example. God gave us what psychologists are calling emotions, but I wouldn't call them emotions at all. But for the sake of flesh, and that's what we understand them to be, let's go ahead and use that term, just so you guys understand what man has actually done. Men have named this. So, in fact, to even talk about emotions is a creation of mankind. They named emotions, and all these different things that go with it. Not our Father. It's important for you to know that, because there's a mechanism behind us we need to understand. And in order to do that, we have to separate this earth knowledge, the stuff that man taught us, from what God has actually given us. God spoke nothing about emotions. He spoke about how we respond to situations. Man categorized those responses and called those emotions. But our Father simply said, when certain things happen, don't do this. No matter how you want to respond, stay within the realm of holiness. See how easy that is? So that takes out all these different categories of emotions. Because I hear people all the time, they use this word emotions, but it's bound in that behavioral science stuff. I took that too, by the way. So I totally understand that. But for the sake of conversation, that means God did give it to us. I'm just making that separation. Men have categorized it. God gave us the ability to respond to our environment. And how we respond to our environment, whether favorably or not, men have categorized as emotions, just so you understand that. But he also tells us, for example, fear. Now, if we were to categorize fear as simply an emotion, all of a sudden to say that God did not give us a spirit of fear, that doesn't make sense, right? But if we were to separate what men have taught us from what the Lord has made us to be, we do have an ability to respond to our environment. He did advise us to stay in the realm of holiness. So then when fear comes along, which is a response to your environment in a very strange way, that is a spirit trying to settle into you or working in you. God did not give us that type of spirit. He didn't put that in us. So that means that something is invading us, causing us to respond to our environment in a very strange way. Do you see that? And folks, this is why it's important that the Word of God always be separated from this stuff that man has done. Because if you look carefully, all the education of mankind has done nothing but limit how faith can be utilized and understood by the average individual. And it's caused the world this very complicated thing. In fact, there is a spirit, there's an actual one of these fallen angels that is in charge over this intellect, sciences, and all this stuff, and how it's perceived. I know it's complicated, but you'll understand as we get into this conversation. But we're beginning with emotions so you understand how it works, right? The difference between what man has done. And man is under the influence of who? Satan, because Satan is the god of this world. So man and his institutions is under that influence. God gave us something different because we're vessels of faith. But what Satan did was Satan made this line, this barrier, where you can have either or, when in truth we should understand it by way of truth, so that we can say, yeah, God gave us emotions, but then we would understand exactly what they are, so that if somebody were to go deeper and ask us, we could have an answer for it. Men have categorized our responses to our environment, to what's around us, to every situation, so on and so forth. Men did that. They categorize these things. God simply gave us that ability to respond to our environment and told us, hey, when you start to respond this way or that way, I did not give you that, because God didn't give us the spirit of fear, meaning God did not put in us the ability to respond to our environment in this fearful way. And if he did not give that to us, then something is invading us when we have fear. Now you see how different that is. When you are just in the realm of academia, you start talking about fear and the mechanisms of fear, behavioral scientists and psychology and psychiatrists, as they would tackle that subject. To talk about the spirit of fear doesn't make sense. But when you put things back in order the way God set them out to be, well, then it's a different story. And by the way, you know when wisdom comes from above is pure, peaceable, gentle, easy to be entreated, full of mercy, good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy. That is James 3:17 and 18. It's not complicated. Doesn't make you scratch your head and give you a headache. Doesn't do any of those things. That's man's knowledge, because he layers his knowledge that only certain people can acquire it. It's a mystery to everybody else, and it's meant to be that way. God doesn't do any knowledge he gave us. It was meant for us to understand it, not to dangle it in front of our faces and say, try and figure this out. That's not how God works. So I have to make these distinctions, because for a long time, I haven't tackled these subjects, and it's just gotten worse and worse and worse and worse. By the way, I'm telling you guys, the disruptions are going to come. These spirits are going to get annoyed. They're going to retaliate. So be watchful. They already know they can't do anything. It doesn't matter what they tried to do to me, but they will try to mess with you in order to get to me. So make sure you understand that, and try your best to stay within the realm of this conversation, and certainly keep your mind on Christ, because they will try to get to you. Not that it's important. Listen, we're talking about, we're not getting an ego or pride or anything, but it's just a conversation that spirits don't like their secrets to be told. Even that small thing about fear, how it makes absolute sense now, right? They don't like that, because it takes you out of the realm of confusion, and Satan is the author of what? Confusion. So that certainly just went against his plans, didn't it? So anyway, back to our conversation. So there are other emotions that are just like that. Now, if I start sounding like I'm giving a block of instruction, just ignore me, okay? Because sometimes it's a fight. So now that you understand that, and I'll say it one more time. God gave us emotions, but take note, that word emotions comes from men. The truth is, God gave us the ability to respond to our environment. But there are certain things God said, I did not give you to respond like that, such as fear. So that when you experience fear, that's another spirit intruding into yours. And when another spirit intrudes into yours, you take on its characteristics, and essentially it will amplify or augment your responses to your environment. Put them in, overdrive, and then you overdo it, of course. At that time, obviously, your body chemistry changes because physically you respond to that stimuli, right? Anything that stimulates you mentally that way, which begins spiritually, is going to, in turn, you're going to have that physical response to it. So remember that. Emotions, and we're going to use that word emotions so that you guys understand. Now, on occasion, I'm going to say go back to the beginning to find out why I'm utilizing the term emotions. You remember when he said be angry and sin not. Now, in the world of academia, anger is this response to stimuli where a person, they display a certain type of anxiety, a forceful anxiety towards a situation. But the Bible says, be angry and sin not. So, anger within itself has to have some sort of basis in the Word of God where we can understand it, and as you would guess, it does. When it speaks about the Lord's anger, when it speaks about the Lord's anger, it's not based in the same anger as we have defined it. Now, I can't go heavy into that one because that will really spark off some things that we'd be here all night trying to combat, because here Satan would come with all of his minions and line them up and say, go ask a question about so-and-so. Anger is a forceful response to something you see. Also, anger relies upon your perception. So anger is experienced by one who is thinking. You're actually thinking about something. When anger arises, it has a story. Now follow me on this. It has a story. Anger will tell you a story of how you have lost, or that you've somehow have been disadvantaged. Whether it be somebody else who's going through something, because you can get angry at somebody else's situation for a just cause, but it's still angry. You're not to sin. When you look at somebody's situation and you get angered because, in my case, if somebody is doing something to a female or a child, that really gets me going. I'll look at it, I'll become angry. You don't have to do often, because I didn't do this in the beginning. I will have to say, well, wait a minute. I'm getting angry at this as though I'm the God of this world, and I'm not. God the Father reigns over all. Satan is he's the God of this world. So if I do intervene, I cannot forcefully do it. I cannot do it out of anger, out of this, I'm being stimulated in the wrong way, and I could easily step over into sin. Because to do something in the spirit of anger is to do it in a spirit God did not give us initially. In fact, when he spoke of anger, it is said that his grace is lifted during that atmosphere or spirits of anger, which is why he said, be angry. In other words, you're going to have to contend with it, because you're going to see a great many things that's going to cause you to respond in a specific way. Now, that, I believe, is from him. But he said, sin not, be angry and sin not, meaning you may initially perceive this and begin to feel this way. Do not act in anger. To be angry and sin not means don't act on it. See, God was angered also. We are made in his image and his likeness. What has happened, though, is that through behavioral scientists, Freud and those guys, they have defined anger as somehow this passive thing that can be, utilized for the strength of one trying to work good. They really twisted this thing up. But the Father said, no, because he said his anger, only his anger, is justified. Our anger we may observe, but we better not respond by anger, because every time somebody responded by anger, they entered into sin. David did it and was punished. Solomon did it and was punished. All of them did it. And they, whoever did that, they messed up. Every time I've responded out of anger, it may not have been some big thing that happened, but I'm telling you right now, I had to deal with the consequences. And if you think you can just be angry act in a situation, get away with it, you're wrong. Once you act on anger, you're dealing with an entity you know nothing about. And that entity is in charge over legions. And those legions enter into your life. All of a sudden, anger starts building. It'll come back. It'll come back some more. Situations, it will work in your life, and it'll come back some more, and it will utilize you to the point of absolute and total degradation. It's trying to get you to sin against your fellow man. God gave us a command to love our neighbor. That was a command he gave us. Now, you cannot love someone and seek to harm them in any way. You cannot love someone and degrade them in any way. You cannot love someone and embarrass them in any way. Always think of somebody else higher than yourselves, not the opposite way around, because that would be pride. If you go to somebody like that in anger, no good will come of it. We've seen that 1,000 times. I've seen people say, well, I'm trying to correct this person. Yeah, but they're not receiving correction from you. So all you're doing is causing friction and more anger to come out in the situation. And indeed, what you're doing is giving a spirit authority to operate within you, within flawed flesh, to speak just about anything. Now, when you're angry in your mind, it sounds right, but it really isn't. Your actions, the other person may say, well, that was below you. You shouldn't have done that. And no good will come of it. And if you don't quickly put it down, it will come back to you. You'll become the home of anger. And then you'll be one of those who says, I have anger problems. But it's because you let it work through you one too many times. You were trusting your flesh vision over God's holy word. And that's very easy to tackle. If God said, don't do it, no matter what you see, refrain from it. Trust in the Lord your God, no matter what it looks like. Because if it looks bad, but the Lord said it's going to be okay, and you act anyway, you do so in disobedience. And the Bible says what? About the children of disobedience? That they're under the power of the prince of the air. We know who that is. The prince of the air is that bad guy. Then you become a child of wrath, and then things fall apart in your life. We want to cancel all that tonight. So this idea of spirits, where did this all start from? Most people have read Isaiah 14, just in case you haven't. I'm going to take you to Isaiah 14 real quick. We're going to read that. In Isaiah 14, it gives an example of how Satan fell, but it also gives an example as to what he was, which is why it's so revealing. Isaiah 14, 12 through 16, in fact, gives that example. It starts like this. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which did weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend in heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. Now listen, this word stars, that's not just starlight. These are entities, or you could say luminaries, right, of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation. A mountain is a headquarters, a place of strength. And he's saying to himself, I'm going to sit in that place of strength of the congregation, of all the citizens of heaven, in the sides of the north. The sides of the north, why? Because the north is a chief nation. The north means above all the rest, right? North is above all the rest. It's not south, it's not east, it's not west. It's above all the nations. It's a kingly place, the north is. So anything coming from the north is coming from a kingly nation, not necessarily by carnal directions. It's not necessarily like that. Very specific language. He says, Isaiah 14:14, I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. Right? He wanted to go to the sides of the north. The highest you can ever get would be at the peak. The sides is a place of kingship. In fact, the sides indicates where you can watch all. But he's going to be brought down to the sides of the pit, where he can see all. That's why he's known as the chief, or the chief one of hell itself. Beelzebub specifically is that name utilized for the one who is the king of all what's down there. But in his heart, right, in his heart, he saw within himself. Perfection is also described in Ezekiel 28:13-19, when God's own people, every time a nation falls, they take on the attributes of Satan. Why though? Why do they take on these same attributes, these same characteristics? It's because that's how Satan works. He influences on a scope and with a broadness that's very difficult to see unless you are a believer. So this guy has set himself up in his heart. He sees himself higher than what he was created by. Ezekiel gives a kind of like a comparison to the fall of another people or nation with Lucifer. Now, in a lot of places, they say this is Lucifer. That's what they say. This is Lucifer. But it likens itself unto Lucifer because of its how it fell, right? Because of its the characteristics described, just like the book of Isaiah. And here it is. It says, "Then came a certain of the elders of Israel unto me, and sat before me. And the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, these men have set up their idols in their hearts, and put the stumbling block of their iniquity before their faces. Should I be inquired of at all by them?" So this sets up how Israel was beginning to respond. Just like if you go back to way back in the beginning of Israel or Ezekiel, you begin to see the construction of a massive fall of Israel, and of course the rebuilding of it, and of course Gog and Magog, the characters, and so on and so forth. But most importantly, as you see the characteristics being formed in Israel through their own disobedience, several people going in and out, replicating exactly what Satan did and what he does today. This is before the fall of a kingdom. They take on these attributes. And in Ezekiel 14, it gives a real close, especially like when you get down to Ezekiel 14:21 through 23, it's giving you declaration, rebelliousness. He's not doing it against them. He's doing it against the darkness they allowed in that place and what they replicated, just like Satan. Then, of course, you keep going along in the book of Ezekiel, after all these ups and downs, and you read this one thing. This is against the king of Tyre, the king of Tyre. Moreover, the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, take my lamentation upon the king of Tyrus, and say unto him, Thus saith the Lord God, Thou sealest up the sum, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. Who is this likened unto? Who's perfect in beauty was made perfect in beauty. This is where that comes from with Lucifer, but it's also in the other books too. It says, Thou hast been in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was thy covering. It's given an example of Satan. Why? Because any rebellious nation, when God's people turn rebellious, they were turned rebellious by the characteristics of Satan. Now, a notable point here, not by the characteristics of Baal, not by the characteristics of anybody else, but of Satan. Why? This gives you the job of Satan in the earth and what he's doing in the earth. When God loves you and when God invests in you his love, Satan will seek to pervert you. He'll pervert you by having you be high-minded, by having you become everything God is against, perverting you against the living God. This is what he could not do to Job. He was trying to get Job to curse God and die, but he couldn't do it. But here's the description in Ezekiel. I'm going to start at Ezekiel 28:14. Thou art the anointed cherub that covereth. I have set thee so. Thou wast upon thy holy mountain of God. Thou hast walked up and down in the midst of the stones of fire. Thou wast perfect in the ways from the day that thou wast created, till iniquity was found in thee. By the multitude of merchandise, they have filled with the midst of thee with violence. And thou hast sinned. Therefore will I cast thee as profane out of the mountain of God, and I will destroy thee, O covering cherub. So why is it saying, O covering cherub? I thought it was talking about Tyre. Well, because they take on the characteristics of Lucifer every single time. Why do they take on the characteristics of Lucifer? Because he's working in the nations. He's working among the people. Anything God loves, he's going to try to get access to, pervert, and turn it against everything of God. You'll see this more and more. But this description of the lament or the word of the Lord against Tyrus sounds just like Lucifer. In fact, he says, O covering cherub in Ezekiel 28:16, scripture fragment at the end. He says, Thine heart was lifted up because of thy beauty. Thou hast corrupted thy wisdom by reason of thy brightness. I will cast thee to the ground. I will lay thee before kings that they may behold thee. Let me pause real quick. Before any nation falls, it's because it was at its height. When a nation is at its height and it starts to govern the world, it begins to look upon itself and says the same thing everybody else does. It'll say, oh, look at me. Look what I have accomplished. Look at what I have done. We are the best of the world and all these different things, right? You know when a nation is about to fall because that's precisely what is quoted. The same thing that's written here. It's the same thing that happens, the same process in Ezekiel 28:17. The heart of that nation is lifted up because of its beauty. Now, if you're lifted up because of your beauty and your nation, that system is built. That means you're taking all credit for your own beauty. You're not thanking God, you're thanking yourself. Thou hast corrupted thy wisdom by reason of thy brightness. So you look upon yourself and you begin to believe you're like a teenager or something like that, right? You can't die. Nothing can happen to you. I'm too smart. I'm too clever. I'm too this. I'm too powerful. You know, we have the best in the world. Nothing can take us out. Before every nation's fall, this happens. The bragging begins. The self-gratification, self-edification, it begins. And then that nation crumbles every single time. God says, I will cast thee to the ground. His rule is what? What is God's rule? When something is up in pride, God will abase it. God will bring it low. He says this, and he's saying the same thing. I will cast thee to the ground. I will lay thee before kings, that they may behold thee. So Satan works in those systems or organizations, whatever the case is. All those who really do, they just succeed beyond measure. And in every case, not some cases, in every case, anything that has succeeded beyond measure has been destroyed. Why? Because every time something exceeds standards and is very successful, they start doing the same things. They'll say, look at what I have done. Pride enters in strong. That spirit of pride. Why? Because that's what Lucifer is. Lucifer, beholding his own beauty, said, I'm more important than everybody else. I need to be above God's throne. These people need to worship me. I have all the good stuff in me and nobody else. And this happens to every single organization, kingdom, person, whatever the case. When they get up to a high level, they start saying, look what I did. I accomplished this. And it never fails. And it's so sad to see, because good people will also do this, right? So no one's immune to this. If you get up to a high plateau in this world, you're going to have approval from the God of this world. God has never placed any of his people on that plateau. He did not. I hate to tell you this, but he didn't. He didn't place any of his people on that plateau. God always positioned his people to do the real work. Those who want to look pretty, who want to shine and pat themselves on the back, right? They fight for that position all the time. That's what media is for. Media, Hollywood, all these folks will celebrate whoever reaches that point, talk about them, give them their fame for a little while, and then poof, they're gone. Happens every single time. This is the way of Satan, who by the way is not flesh and blood like we are, but is spirit, but he is not bound. He's all over the place. Now he is resisted, but he's not bound. He's resisted by the Messiah, but he's not bound. If someone does not have the Messiah, they have no protection from this thing. Every spirit, whether it be pride, whether it be wrath, whether it be envy, whether it be the seven sisters, and this, that, and the other, there are seven characteristics in the human body that are called seven sisters. Anyway, whether it be any of these things, all of them are opposed by God's appointed angels. There's an angel that will oppose each one of these things. The Messiah can oppose them all, and he has for our sakes. But they still work among men, because not everybody has received Christ. So where they may not be attached to you, you certainly face them on a daily basis through other folks, because other folks bring them in proximity to you. Ever have somebody walk into your house and your entire atmosphere changes? Ever get somebody on the phone and you were in one spirit, but when you're on the phone, it takes about maybe 30 seconds to a minute. You're in a total different spirit by the other person. And whatever they're talking about, these spirits will have a person formulate words in a manner that can shake the other person on the opposite side of the phone. So they are perfectionists at dark and negative emotions. In other words, they know how to make you respond negatively to your environment. They know how to get you into sin that you will stumble. There is a spirit assigned to everybody who is a newlywed. Do you guys know this? You know the prayer that Jesus gave us? Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Now, I want you to think of that. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. That's a double of protection. Lead us not into temptation. Don't let these spirits get near me, Lord. And deliver us from evil. Deliver me from the ones that have already gotten to me. How about that one? Because if he's not leading you into temptation, how can you be bound in evil unless it already be with you? That's why I say it's a perfect prayer, because it addresses all levels of existence. The heart being lifted up because of the beauty as Satan beheld himself. He was pleased with what he saw. He was pleased with what he saw in himself. And when this happens, when a person is pleased with what they saw, like, for example, in your life, right? There have been times in your life when you looked at your life and you were pleased with how things were going. Okay, that was one thing. But this is this. His heart was lifted because of his beauty. And we know it was lifted in the area of pride and vanities and all these things. And it says his wisdom was corrupted by his brightness. In other words, he did accomplish, he did look the look, but he had forgotten who bestowed that upon him. His brightness was not because of him. It's because he was made like that by the Almighty. And that's the part he forgot instantly. So taken by his own beauty that he had forgotten about the Most High. That's when you go absolutely bonkers. That's when somebody gets on a microphone on the news and they say, look what I have done. I did this and I did that. That does make me recoil too, because in truth, nothing man attempted to do would ever work because of what opposes it, lest God had bestowed mercy upon that individual. And if evil has that person, they're going to accomplish a lot, and they destroy themselves in pride and ego and iniquity the more they brag on themselves. So it makes me recoil, because you know those people are blind as bats when they start saying, look what I have accomplished. Well, first of all, if a person is in charge of a bunch of other people, the person in charge didn't accomplish anything. The people who actually did the work did. They accomplished it. So how can the person at the top in the nations of men take credit for everything that's working and put on somebody else everything that's not working? If you take off your blinders, in other words, if you peel back your flesh and start seeing things spiritually, which is to see it like this, that the flesh is corrupted severely because of spirits that often work in the flesh of men. If a person does not have the covering of the blood of the Lamb, they are prone to these spirits, and they will begin to see as these spirits want them to see. We're back to the emotions. These spirits can amplify, they can induce our responses to the environment by way of the flesh. And when a person looks and they're pleased with everything they have done and begin to brag on it, like nobody else did any work but them, there's a problem, isn't it? Now, I've heard good people speak, and I've heard bad people speak. Bad people, when they speak, all you hear them say is, I did this just like I said I would. That's a bad person. A good person, when they speak, is they'll say, the wonderful men and women of so-and-so have worked tirelessly to accomplish this. I can take no credit, but will bestow it upon all those who did so-and-so and such, right? That's a good person, because they always are inclusive. The people who actually did the work, and they will take no credit. But a tyrant will always take credit, period. Because we've been there before. How many times have you taken credit for something you didn't do? So you have that part. You have this part about Lucifer. Lucifer does this day in and day out. He will always do this. So when you give way to your own flesh, when you are not mindful of the truth, which is you are a spirit and you occupy a vessel in this world, but that vessel has others seeking to also occupy it. And if you give them access, they're going to come in and ruin your life. Well, then, when you're not mindful about that, you start slipping, you start allowing these things to work in your life in the wrong way. That's when your life goes upside down and you start saying, well, I don't know why this keeps happening. I don't know why that happened. I don't know why that happened. All you have to do is a little, introspection on yourself. Look inside yourself and say, wait a minute. Am I operating my life by man's dictates, or am I actually doing what the Lord said to do? My easy test for this, I do this every day. I'll say, wait a minute, am I right? Because if I ever get in a mindset where I would defend myself and say I'm right, I'm already wrong. Do you guys know that? That will just take away everything. It'll take away everything. It'll ruin everything. It allows all sorts of things in that shouldn't be there. And I can physically feel the weight of it. So I don't do that self-justification thing. I'll never do that. Because all that does is stand up. We build a character in this earth. I want you to think about something. You are a living soul. Everybody sees your flesh, not your soul. That's what they see. Now, if I present my flesh as being perfect, did a person truly see me? No, they did not. It's just what I'm projecting. And sometimes we get caught up in projecting a person we want to be, we want others to see. We get caught up in that all the time. Who you really are is not who's within you. Do you guys know there's a spirit? He's part of this one is a male, part of what's called a familiar spirit, but it can take the form of people's loved ones. Do you guys know that? Interacts with mankind to deceive mankind into believing that his loved ones are living a different life in the afterlife. That's what it does. It does it all the time. It's in charge of legions. Now I'm telling you, these things are written all over. They're written in very special places. But these principles were taught to people until certain councils got involved and stripped that from all books and said, no, people can't know that. They wrote an edict about it. They said, by the powers they work in government, you cannot have the people stand above that government. This would empower them too much. Now I'm paraphrasing, but that's essentially what it says. They did not want the people empowered above the government. At that time, the government was also, it dictated what faith was. Government was not separate faith at that time, but they did it. And it's so odd to me how that modern day folks in high positions, spiritual positions, they know about this but won't say anything. Envy, another spirit that causes damage, along with fear, along with wrath, along with anger. Envy is another one that causes problems. In other words, there's a hierarchy to the spiritual realm that could be known, but it's been stripped out so much. Hardly everybody goes into the Hollywood version of spiritual things, when all they have to do, all one has to consider is their own life. If you were made in the image and likeness of the Creator, why would you ever get frustrated in the first place? Why would a child that's 1 year old utter something that child has never been exposed to? Surely you have seen that. How can a child at the age of 2 exhibit characteristics of a person who's in their 50s, or give a response that's so intelligent no one has an answer to it? The Bible tells us a child's heart is full of folly. You should look up that word folly, but you should look it up in the original language and you'll find out that spirits often use children during a specific time to tempt the parents, especially when the parents offer the child no covering. God is merciful, yes, but parents have a job to do that they have long forgotten about, which is why marriage is so important. I know nobody wants to hear that in 2022. Marriage is important because it's a covenant. And when somebody enters a godly covenant, that means both of them know about the Lord God Almighty. And when this happens, the child is protected. I would say about 90% of you know what it is not to be protected and to be a child. You know what it is not to be protected. You know exactly what can happen. Many of you have walked around saying, how can God let a child go through this? It's all for His glory in the end. But it didn't have to happen that way. It happened that way, yes. You survived it, yes. You've been given extraordinary gifts because of it, yes. But does it have to continue that way? No. But how many people get together and they're unequally yoked? One believes and one does not. And the one that does not believe is so oppressive over the one that believes that they can't even pray for the child openly. They can't anoint the child openly. They'll never come into that same covenant for the sake of the child openly. And how many people these days have only one parent in the household? You see what's happening at the very core of what protection is. Satan has assaulted. And because people are so steeped in the flesh teachings of men, they have become massively spiritually blinded, which gives these spirits free rein to do whatever they want and have no one rebuke them, because if you can't identify them, those of you who believe, you'll never rebuke it. If I were up here talking and you noticed an entity that was trying to disturb me, you should just rebuke it. But people don't think that way. They look at the person and they say, well, that person needs to take a break. Something's wrong with that. No, rebuke the spirit and the person is free. Jesus has already granted the authority. But if you're blind, you'll never utilize that authority. If a police officer never saw the criminal, there'll be no arrest. If that traffic officer does not see the one speeding, that's drinking beer while he's speeding, there'll be no arrest. If you can't see the spirit, you'll not rebuke it. You'll attribute what's happening to the person, missing the whole point. As a result of that, we live in the days where men prosecute men always. Haven't you noticed? It's destroying people's lives, and the spirit's responsible. Now we have to go into why they have this insatiable appetite. There's a reason they have that insatiable appetite. There's a reason it's fine-tuned to human beings. You guys know when the fallen ones fell, Genesis 6. It states in Genesis 6 that they saw the daughters of women, of course, but born of them, born of this union, were men of renown, heroes of old. Two different types of people. Heroes of old, that means people like them. Men of renown, right? Plus other things were born. But as you know, they did not survive. All of them did not survive the flood. And those that did, they were kind of isolated, right? They still had generations of Nephilim, so on and so forth. But it was said of them that when they died, their spirits carried on and were known in the earth as evil spirits. These same evil spirits, born of human beings, inherited both intelligence, some of the traits of human beings. So they, being born of rebellious angels, now you have to remind yourself of something. There's a difference between God's angels and the rebellious angels. Just like us, I'm going to make this distinction because a lot of people have this question. They say, well, how come God doesn't redeem the fallen angels? Here's something very simple. If I were to walk up to one of you guys, right, say if we all lived in one big house. So I walk up to one of you guys and I kick you in the knee, right? It really hurts. And then I say, well, I didn't think that really hurt because I didn't think you were real. Or I wouldn't get away with that, right? No, because I know you're real. And I know that if I were to kick you in the knee, that would hurt. The fallen angels were not believing God by faith. They saw him. They interacted with him. They interacted with all things of the heavens. They knew it for a fact. And so when they rebelled, they didn't do so in ignorance. They did so knowing fully what they were doing. Azazel and all these angels that did this, they knew precisely what they were doing. There's no redemption for them. When we make a choice here, having not seen anything largely, we do things in ignorance. Because if we knew what the results of our actions really were, we would not have those actions. But they knew. When they mated with human beings, they were in a rebellious state, stripped in a rebellious state. So then the spirit of them was already rebellious towards light. So they were already in the realm of darkness, twisted mentally. And when they had children, those same characteristics came out in the kids, which made them not only highly intellectual, having supernatural intellect and so on and so forth, but also their deviousness was also supernatural. So when they were to plot and plan and all these things, they did it more intensely than we ever could. They were very loyal to their parents. To the fallen's children, their parents were like gods to them. Remember, the fallen angels had no good relationship with the Father. So the children of the fallen, the children worshiped their parents like gods. Now, it was said of their parents, you look up into the sky, you see constellations. It's a bit more than that. Just as the cells in your body, if you were inside your own body and looked at the cells, they would just be cells. You would have no idea what those cells constitute, why the heart cells are different than the kidney cells, so on and so forth. You just see them as different type cells. You would not know as a whole what their function was. Same way we do. We look at the stars and we see them as stars. We don't know the extended function of the heavens. We don't know that. Men are finding out. They're not going to share it with anybody, but we, from down at this perspective, we can only, based on previous knowledge, what other men have obtained and then observe, and then, that's what we're stuck with. But each one of these children had a parent, and they would say that their parents were associated with a certain star. Just so you know that, they were associated with a certain star, which is why you see that Satan was the morning star. All the angels, all of those angels were associated with stars. These were not just any angels. These were chiefs of 10. That's who the fallen were. So they were powerful, right? They were second under Lucifer. Lucifer was second in the heavens. And so when they fell, they fell. They were bound up because God told the 4 archangels to bind them up, who would dare cross the line and directly corrupt flesh, who would directly intrude and invade upon flesh. They were bound. Satan did not do that. What Satan did, he did spiritually. What they did physically. And that was a bigger no-no than even doing things spiritually, right? You know how when people start talking about the Pleiades and Orion and all these different stars, did you know all of those are mentioned in the books they took out and what they are and the names of those angels that are associated with them? Now, these angels, they're not what you think they are. They're not, sometimes a person would think of fallen angels like some alien they saw on television. No, that's not the deal. They have very specific functions. It's just that they are corrupted. There's an angel that lies. That's all he does is lie. He'll never tell the name of his parent, right? He also has taught other entities to lie to humanity, to trick humanity into believing that somehow humanity has dominion over something, that they have I know it's controversial, but they lie about the name that they give to humankind so they can continue to work in the earth, thinking that they have left the person. They simply go to somebody else. There's another one that empowers an exorcist and guides and leads that exorcist in many things if they're not careful. If they're not doing it by the blood of the Lamb, they're doing it by one of the fallen. See how tricky things are. If you're not in obedience, you're doing it by a different power. So everything you're doing is by some sort of power when you respond to a situation. When you feel emotions rise up, that's an augmentation. That's a response that's being amplified by one of these spirits, waiting for you to respond emotionally so they can augment it, begin to speak into your mind and give you something more of what the situation was. And then all of a sudden a person goes crazy. This is the way they do. So when it is mankind who says, no, it's not spirits, it's just, just how humans are. Don't believe that, because that's why crime has increased like it has. Right? When a person gets, when they get angry, these filthy, bad thoughts hit their mind. Thoughts of murderous thoughts hit their minds, right? When a person is envious, when a person is jealous, when a person is lusting after someone, there's always a spirit that's going to amplify what a person has in them. You have a response to your environment. They will amplify that response in darkness if they can to have you go back into sin. The Lord teaches us a man is tempted and drawn away of his own lust. So, in other words, if you have a potential in you, one of these spirits is going to take advantage of it. They're going to augment it, amplify it, enhance it, make it more than what it is, and then you'll act on it. My advice to everybody is don't allow these spirits to talk you into hurting another human being. Don't do it. They want you to believe that it's solely the other person. That's not the truth. You know, when you get angry, every accusation against the other person comes into your mind. You can think of everything they ever did wrong. You can think of everything. That's what these spirits do. They will supernaturally feed you strength and everything else just so that you can commit a sin against somebody else, so they can corrupt you. All you have to do is think of your life and you'll see the truth of it. When you are sad about something, they will cause depression. That's not all coming from you. These are negative thoughts that will crush your situation that has not taken place yet. People have entertained these spirits when nothing has taken place and have done terrible things. They get the news of something, but the spirit makes it real in that very hour before it's ever real, and then they act on it. Do you see that? So they have people acting on things that don't exist. And who do you think it is that coordinated the bad news in the first place? They did. And so every day of your life, they attempt to draw you into darkness, into the realm of iniquity. Emotionally, they gain entrance that way. And if you entertain thoughts and speculations about a person, about some happening or something, you're going to start utilizing not holiness, but unholiness. And then if you meditate upon that, you'll act upon it. And then you'll enter right into sin. Do you see how that works? That infuriated me. That made me angry. Like, are you kidding? That they would fool humanity into doing this day in and day out. And humanity is blaming the other person who's also been beguiled. And now you have two evils upon each other. And all a Christian has to do is make a commitment within themselves to refuse to target another human being ever again. See, I don't know about you, but I don't like to be targeted. I am targeted. I don't like it. So why in the world would I target somebody else for any reason? There is no reason enough that would justify that. But if more and more people would see it spiritually, they would free the person from that spirit and that person would repent. See, I've seen some pretty bad guys be free of spirits and then instantly repent. I've seen them go to jail with peace in their hearts because they had repented. I've seen this, but I've also seen people in a courtroom who are worse than the criminal. What's going on in their hearts and their minds is worse than what that criminal could ever do. I've seen it. And this is those spirits at work. Every time we believe that things are as man said they are, we are in the spirit of error. The Bible speaks about this. When we believe simply the counsel of men, the teachings of men from the world, we're already in the spirit of error because we are children of faith, people of faith. We're living spirits, living souls, but we don't believe in spiritual things, that we would act upon the counsel of those who are in flesh and flesh only, who are beguiled and don't even know it, take their counsel and then propagate all of what they teach, laying it upon somebody else. That is destruction upon destruction, is what that is. Yet we will claim we're washed by the blood of the Lamb, but will not receive the knowledge of the Lord in our hearts concerning evil. But we need a target. Like when a person wrongs a family and they say, oh, well, we have no peace until that person pays for what they did. That's the spirit of vengeance, and it never dies. There is no peace when the spirit of vengeance is involved. I've seen people, after they have openly stated they have peace, years later they have no peace. Even if the person was electrocuted, it does not bring them peace. It only brings pain. You see, once you identify, first, once you separate God's knowledge from man's knowledge, and you begin to operate by God's knowledge, you'll see what he says. You'll see exactly what Jesus was speaking of, especially when he talked about the division of the flesh and the spirit. You'll understand statements like when Jesus said, to love the world is to have enmity with God. If you love the world, or if you embrace the world, that is to accept all things of this world, you have angry separation with God. The carnal mind is against God. You know what carnal is? That's your flesh state or your natural state. So then your natural mind is just like the world's mind, and it is against God himself. It's not bound in faith, it's bound in facts. And what is a fact? A fact is something that we can prove by way of observation with our flesh eyes, not spiritually. Do you see what they're doing to the world? Oh my, when you learn about what was actually written a long time ago, some of it makes you sick of what you have believed today. There's nothing wrong with knowledge. There's everything wrong. Everything wrong when we deny holiness because of man's knowledge. Everything wrong with that. But do you see the contrast between the teachings of our Father through the prophets, through our Lord Jesus Christ, through the apostles, and through some of you today, versus the teachings of this world? Again, emotions, that's a name mankind gave to categorize our responses to environment. They put them in different categories, not your Father. Your Father has given you all of them, but he told us to respond to our environment in holiness, not in darkness, not in murder, not with lusts, not with greed, not with fear, not with hatred, not with wrath, not with any of those things that humanity gives us an excuse or a license to go out there and do. And if mankind says you can be angry at somebody, if you listen to them, the only reason we would ever listen to them is because we want to be angry at somebody. It comes down to a choice. And I'm telling you right now, when you're dealing with your family, if you can make this distinction, you could put down every single attack before it ever got started. But how many times did you feed into it? How many times did you join into it and only amplify the negativity, cause further division? If you could simply see it and remember that, yes, the Lord gave you the ability to respond to your environment, but he told you, don't respond out of darkness. Don't respond with hatred and wrath and revenge and all those things, but in holiness. And if another person is responding this way, a spirit has indeed enhanced their response to what they see, to what they hear, to all these different senses. And it's up to that Christian who can see to rebuke it. And to rebuke something, spirits are not hard of hearing. Jesus has given us the power to rebuke them, but only when we are in position with the Lord. It is written that Emmanuel opposes these spirits, and that spirit dwells within men. That's why some of them cannot do everything they want to do because of Christ. They knew he was coming too, because they tried to destroy mankind a few times before Christ ever got here. If mankind is totally corrupted and destroyed, they can continue to exist, can't they? See, these things want to live forever. They do, doing what they do. They know they're going to be imprisoned. The children of the fallen are roaming around in the earth. That's what we're dealing with. The parents of the fallen are bound in chains. They'll never be set free. You're not dealing with them. You're dealing with the children. And the children are born of a union of us and the angels. So they know all about our flesh. They know all about it. And they're subservient to Satan himself. I believe 77 kings in hell itself. And Lucifer is a king over all them, and below them are legions of other things that we deal with every single day. That's the spiritual realm. So to put this in simple terms, these things are the thing. They are the spirits. They are the attitudes. They're the voices that get you into disobedience. They're the ones making you go against the word of God. They're the ones that will plant words like, well, that may mean something different. Well, everybody does this. That's what they do. Somebody said, Michael always hangs up the phone when people talk about it. I do. I will not entertain that. Even in my own household. If I'm telling you now, if you just simply watch, if you take your heart and put it towards your fellow man, right? And you commit yourself to loving what the Father loves, you'll start to see, number one, you'll see the beauty in life itself, in human beings. But you'll also see them very clearly. You'll see when a person is just outside the scope of light. You'll see when these things have their influence on them. You can hear it with your ears in their speech. You can see it in their activities. You can anticipate many things, all because you commit yourself to loving your neighbor, right? Not hating him, not finding fault with him, but loving him. If it's in your heart for your fellow man to be free of these things, you will see them. And in that moment, you'll be able to combat them, because everybody who if they come to an environment I'm in, they all say the same thing. I feel so peaceful here. And the reason for that is because I'm always on duty. I'm always on guard. I'm always rebuking something. Does it tire you out? Yes, and it's worth it. Every single bit of it is worth it, because you're doing something for others who cannot see it yet. My issue is not what a person can see or cannot see. They can be encouraged to see it. Over time, they'll learn through Christ. But when you can see it, then you're able to do something about it. That's an empowerment. And many of you have faced these things. You know what it is to meet that spirit that's after children. You know what it is to meet that spirit that would work through someone who would break down your family and a relationship. You know what it is when that spirit enters into somebody who opens the Bible but is so zealous that you can have no peace with him. You know what it is to be around these spirits. And if we're honest with ourselves, and if we can not present our lives like somehow they came out of this picture-perfect book, but just simply share the common experiences we've gone through, so many could be healed. Listen, in a dream, I rebuked some spirits. That was the first time I found out they're not hard of hearing. They don't need to hear it twice. I need to stand in Christ. I need not sit there and pronounce, Jesus is in me and I'm not obeying him. No, I need to have my position in Christ. I need to stand with Christ that he may be in me. I cannot, by way of convenience, claim Christ is in me and I've not obeyed him. I must stand within Christ, within his sayings, within his way, his prescribed way of life. And when that happens, I'm a standing rebuke to evil itself. Jesus has already rebuked the devil. If Jesus be within you, that devil is rebuked. The problem is, and I'm saying this from the heart, we're not always standing in Christ. We're always taking up positions to try and impress upon somebody else that we have Christ. That doesn't mean we're standing in him. To stand in Christ is to obey him, to agree with him. So guess what? If I agree with everything of Christ, but I don't agree that this person needs mercy, I am not in agreement with Christ. The gospel is for those who have blown it. The gospel is for those who are wounded. The gospel is for those who are in prison. The gospel is for those who are blind. And if you're blind, you can't tell what's happening. That's what the gospel's for. Jesus did not come to set the well-to-do free. That's not what he came for, but to set the captive free. So the captive are the people who are out there doing everything and anything. Those are the ones who need the love God put in you. And I don't take that safe route. You know, the safe route is to simply love those who love you back. That's not even near the fight. The real fight are with the castaways, the ones who are angry because their heart is torn into 1,000 pieces. The one who's supernaturally assaulted, and every time they try to get a place to stay in, something odd happens. The ones who are born broken, who have no parents, they don't even know who they are, and the world doesn't want them either. That's who the fight is for. Because these devils and demons, these things roaming around the earth, they already beguiled these folks. And these folks are crying for something, for anything. And who will hear them? While everybody's busy going to those who can dress themselves and those they can actually talk to, I'm going to go to the other ones that nobody can talk to. The ones that everybody rejects. The ones that say, well, that person's gone because their belief is all jacked up. I'm going to them. Because I understand intimately how that can happen to anybody. It is by God's grace and mercy we're kept, not by our own resolve. It doesn't matter how smart I am, how strong I am, how much faith I think I have. I can be in a worse position than any of them at any given moment. It is by God's grace and mercy I am kept. I realize and know that to my heart. Somebody says, Mike, is there such thing as a spiritual vampire? Is what people name them. Meaning, when you get around the person like that, well, you know, I have another name for it. We get tired of people not agreeing with us. Let's go ahead and face that truth. A spirit cannot do anything to you that you don't give it permission to do. Do you know that? Of course, they're called the lawless ones, yes. But if you give that spirit permission to drain you dry, that means you're doing the opposite of what the Lord said. The Lord said, resist the devil and he will flee from you. And he showed us how to resist. We resist by standing in him. And if we stand in Christ in that moment, we are humble. We are in meekness. We're not prideful. We're not boastful. We're not braggers. We're not any of those things. And sometimes we do the opposite, don't we? We stand up and we profess our power. We profess our position. We profess all this in our own self-righteousness. And then we get worn out by other folks who will not. It's almost like talk to a person for 5 hours. And then they say, I missed what you said. I wasn't listening. You'll be like, what? Oh, I'm worn out. I'm done with this person. So the truth is sometimes what people are calling a spiritual vampire is simply a set of circumstances or a person who's just simply not in agreement with us no matter what we say. But I'll tell you something. Here it is. You want to get past a spiritual vampire who can seem to take your energy? Don't ever try to change a person. Just simply try to introduce them to Christ, and you'll find that nobody can take anything from you. When you're trying to change a person, you're going to pour yourself into that person, correct? But you're going to do it in a way that they listen to you. Don't do that anymore. Pour into people and direct them to Christ. At every turn, at every rebuttal, just keep telling them Jesus is the key. And I can assure you, you're not going to be tired after talking to that person. You're going to be charged up, ready for the next one. So, Michael, are these rebukes said in head or loud? I'm thinking in head and in heart is fine, but sometimes not. When I rebuke something, I do it in truth. Whether it come out of the mouth or not, sometimes I'm not even aware of. Because when you rebuke something by way of truth, you yourselves and everything in you stands against their activities. A rebuke is not a word. A rebuke is your position. If I rebuke a person who's eating ice cream, then I will not eat ice cream. That's a fact. I don't need to say anything. I'm standing against eating ice cream myself. So in order to truly rebuke something, you must be against it. I can't just simply say, I rebuke you, and then 5 minutes later I do the same thing. That's not a rebuke. A rebuke is your position. I don't say that just as a test. I live by that. Sometimes I won't say a word, but I will take a stance against it with everything in me. And guess what? That thing, whatever it is, it already knows. It already knows. These things are spiritual. You can yell in your soul and everything in the spirit's going to hear it. You can thank Jesus in a place and never let anything come out of your mouth, and everything is going to hear it. Everything but humanity. When you rebuke a spirit, you're not dealing with a person. You're dealing with a spirit. They understand exactly what you stand for. But remember, they're deceivers. Many of them have deceitful traits, and they try to trick people into pouring on extra to make it like a play or something. No, this is for real. Take your stance in Christ for real, and whatever will manifest will manifest. An example of a real rebuke is, suppose I rebuked an argumentative spirit, or a spirit that just augmented some arguments. Then guess what? I take a stance against it. All of a sudden I get a phone call. The person on the phone starts to frustrate me. And then the person says something. I say, no, it's not that way, it's this way. And they go, well, I'm doing that. No, don't do it that way. And I'm sitting here talking to this person in frustration, arguing. And I say, well, forget it. I gotta go. This is just too much. Click. And I hang up, right? Well, guess what? There's no way somebody can come into my environment and I stand against an argument or that spirit that augments arguments. I can't do that. You know why? Because I just worked by its power. But if I'm on the phone and somebody brings up something foolish on purpose, or they're just simply not listening, but I'm standing in love, really giving an ear to help the person, all of a sudden, I have to go and I say, listen, we'll pick this up another time, okay? Are you okay? But I just refuse to argue. Then I have rebuked whatever's causing those arguments. And spirits know that. They know when you're working by their power or not, because they sit there and watch people all the time. When you're mumbling to yourselves, right? When you mumble to yourself, something's not working out, you're mumbling to yourselves. What do you think they're doing? They're taking note. Oh, this person. All you have to do is just wait. Right when they think they're going to have it made, just make this breakdown, and that person will curse the whole situation. We got them. So when they see you get up to that level where you can actually have freedom, where you can actually have peace, where you can actually have resolve and all those things, and they will pluck you right off of your plateau through that one thing. Why? Because they observe you doing it every day. They know what gets to you. We tell them they don't need to read minds or anything else. We openly show them what aggravates us. The other person on the other side of the phone can't see how you reacted, but they can. The spiritual realm is not like this realm. It's not like they have to travel a long distance to get from one side of something to the other. That's not what they have to do. Spiritual realm is different. So they're not traveling 50 hours just to get, a few thousand miles. That's not the way it works. But we do demonstrate exactly where we are, and they have observed us. They're not, listen, they know about us because we keep blaming people. That's how you know. If people could truly see them, if they could truly identify them, they would never blame another person ever again. A person that is in bondage, how do they get in bondage? By themselves? No. If a person is captive, how are they captive? By themselves? No. If a person is blind, if a person is maimed, if a person is lame, did they get that way by themselves? Nope. Who do you think did that? You already know who did that. Now you know what to look for. Somebody says, I'm having a hard time understanding how to purge anger without it being suppression. This will also take a certain amount of time to effect. Now, in truth, what is the root of anger? The root of anger is an outcome we don't want. That's what the root of anger is. If I'm looking at a person's situation, somebody's getting abused, I get angry because I don't want that result. So anger is a result of us not getting or seeing what we wanted to see, and it gets intensified. The first thing you have to do to start to get rid of anger is understand life in a very different way. Life is not to be perfected here. That's not what life is for. Life is a process, and everybody has to go through very different stages, in the multiple stages in this life. People, when things don't work out or something like that, we don't get what we want, we get angry because we feel like if that person would have did this, I would have been better off. Or if this hadn't happened, I wouldn't have had this pain. Or if that hadn't taken place. So we get angry at the outcome of things, right? Understand the outcome of things belongs to the Most High, that all things are purposed. How many of you would get angry at God's work? Nobody in their right mind will get angry at God's work. So understand something. He already said we're going to have trials and tribulations. So instead of getting angry, understand that situation that's not working out the way you thought is being managed by your Creator. It's not something somebody's getting away with. And people don't get away with anything. People have no idea what they're about to face. It's up to those who do know to inform them in an effort to save their souls. Anger is a habit. We get in the habit of using things. Anger is no different. We get in the habit of using anger, of allowing it in at specific times. So get out of the habit of using anger. Don't see life, right, through the eyes of your emotions. See life through the eyes of Christ, through his heart, his very heart. He allowed us to see that by his gospel, become a student of the gospel, and it opens up. Start forgiving immediately. Start forgiving everything. I mean, really forgive. Don't just say it. No, start forgiving everything immediately.